If I could go back and talk to my 22-year-old self, I wouldn't waste a single breath on those rah-rah motivation speeches. I'd skip right to the good stuff, the habits I had to learn the hard way.
Look, this isn't just some generic list of 7 tips to success you find online. I've actually lived every single one of these. This is the real story of how I went from my absolute lowest point to building a life I couldn't even have imagined. And it all kicked off during one single pretty terrible year.
So let me paint you a picture. It's 2014. I'm 25, and I just got laid off from what I thought was my dream job. One day, I'm on top of the world, and the next, I'm unemployed, completely broke, and just lost. It was the scariest place I'd ever been, and honestly, I wasn't proud of the guy I was becoming.
That year, man, that year was rock bottom. But it's funny, looking back on it now, a decade later, I realized that hitting the bottom was also the beginning of everything. It was the year I had no choice but to start building myself back up, one habit at a time. Now, this whole journey definitely wasn't an overnight thing. In just one year, I went from being laid off and embarrassed to somehow landing a job at Google. That's where I started my YouTube channel as a side hustle. By 2018, I took a leap of faith and left that safe job to go all in on my own thing. And before I turned 30, that bet completely changed my life. But none of it would have happened without the foundation I started laying back in 2014.
So, where do you even start when everything feels like it's falling apart? You start with the foundation. See, you can't change the world around you until you fix what's going on inside. And for me, that foundation came down to two things: mindset and money. Okay, the very first habit was so simple, but it was an absolute game changer. I just made a deal with myself. I would replace 1 hour of mindless entertainment, scrolling social media, binging Netflix, whatever, with 1 hour of learning something. Every single day. And I got obsessed. I was devouring audiobooks on my commute, at the gym, while I was cooking dinner. My mom had actually given me Rich Dad Poor Dad years before, but now that I was actually broke, the words just hit different. It felt like I suddenly had a direct line to all these brilliant people: Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, Ryan Holiday, and they were literally giving me the cheat codes to life. And that leads right into the next habit, because all the books in the world won't do you any good if your finances are a mess. I learned this the hard way. If you can't control your money, you can't control your life. Period. This one takes me way back. When I was 14, I got a job at Domino's Pizza, and I started tracking every single dollar I made. I planned, I budgeted, I saved for 2 straight years until I could finally buy my first car, this green 1995 Volkswagen Jetta. It cost $2,000, and I'm telling you, driving that thing around, I felt like an absolute king. That feeling of setting a goal and actually hitting it, you can't put a price on that. All right, so once I started to get my internal world sorted out, my mind and my money, it was time to focus on how I was showing up in the external world. Because how the world sees you really does start from how you see yourself. It's all about projecting from the inside out. I used to totally underestimate this, but I came to realize that your ability to communicate, well, it pretty much determines how far you're going to go in life. And it's not just about talking, it's about really, truly connecting with people. I learned this one in the trenches. See, as an immigrant from Brazil, Portuguese is my first language. When I decided to start making my YouTube videos in English, it was a trial by fire. My accent was so heavy, I was constantly stumbling over my words. Honestly, it was painful to watch. But after filming thousands of videos, that forced practice built a kind of confidence in me that I just couldn't have found anywhere else. Now, this next habit might sound a little superficial, but trust me on this one, it's not. It's about changing the way you think about getting dressed, not as vanity, but as a tool for self-respect. Your style is basically your silent introduction. People make up their minds about you in a split second. But way more important than that, when you put in the effort to look good, you just feel better. It's that simple. And that confidence, it just radiates out into everything else you do. And that deep confidence, it's forged in discipline. For me, the ultimate training ground for discipline wasn't in some business class or a book. It was in the gym. Making fitness a non-negotiable part of my schedule taught me what consistency really means. I actually started working out when I was 16, right after I got that Jetta. But the real secret to why I stuck with it wasn't the car, it was my best friend, Chris. We went every single day after school, no excuses. We kept each other accountable. And that kind of discipline, that act of just showing up, especially when you don't feel like it, that spills over into everything. All right, this brings us to the final and maybe the most important set of habits. You can think of this as the operating system that makes everything else run smoothly. It's all about mastering the one resource you can never, ever get back: your time.
This is really two habits that work hand in hand: buying back your time and then mastering the time you have. First, you've got to find ways to reclaim hours in your day. For me, that meant using a meal prep service, so I wasn't wasting time cooking and cleaning up every night. But once you've bought that time back, you have to be ruthless about how you use it.
When I was working at Google, my life was just insane. I had a demanding full-time job, I was trying to build my YouTube channel, posting on Instagram every day, and hitting the gym 5 or 6 days a week. I literally didn't have a choice. I had to become a master of my schedule or I would have drowned. One of the most powerful tools for this is something called the Eisenhower Matrix. It's super simple. You just sort your tasks into these 4 boxes. Now, most people live their lives trapped in quadrants 1 and 3, constantly putting out fires and reacting to urgent stuff. The real secret to getting ahead is learning to live in quadrant 2, proactively scheduling and working on things that are important but not urgent yet. This is where all the real growth happens.
And the way you live in quadrant 2 is by planning. I used Google Calendar like my life depended on it. Because it kind of did. I time blocked everything: my work tasks, my gym sessions, even my downtime with friends. There's a saying that work expands to fill the time you give it. So you have to be the one in control.
Okay, so I know that was a lot. 7 habits can feel pretty overwhelming, but here's the most important thing. You do not have to do it all at once. That is not how I did it. The real key is to just start with one. Pick one and master it. Then move on to the next one. So I want to leave you with a question. Out of everything we just talked about, what is the one habit you can commit to starting today? Because that's all it takes. Just one small change that builds momentum for the next one, and then the next. And before you know it, you'll look back a year from now and barely recognize the person you used to be. Let's make this year your year. You got this.